Good morning, everyone. My name is Michelle Lennon. I'm the pastor of the Northfield Tilton Congregational Church. And this morning I'm sharing a Thanksgiving message. And I just had to laugh because, very often I think a lot of people that bring messages on a Sunday morning know that they're speaking to themselves as much as the congregations that we serve. And for me today, definitely no different than that. I just had a rough night and a lot of things going on and a little stressed with a number of things and just realizing, that God is sovereign and he's got us. And, it's sometimes easier to say live with a grateful attitude than we sometimes feel, but, sometimes it's a choice. And I do think about that, sometimes I cry because it's cathartic and sometimes, there's some pain that needs to be released in me. Um, but for the most part, I have to say, like, I live with an attitude of gratitude. Like, I'm grateful for so many things in my life, so many things that um, I've been able to accomplish in my life. So many people that I've been blessed to have on my journey that has allowed plans to unfold in ways that have just been somewhat miraculous to me. And I just, have been thinking about this Thanksgiving, how I was so bummed out to talk to my mom because she's like so excited and talking about all the stuff that's going on with one of my siblings. And it's like, I really don't care, mom. It's like I care about my relationship with you, not the relationship you have with other people. And sometimes, it's so painful. Like I'm holding back the tears when she's talking to me, but I'm still grateful. I'm grateful for the parents that I have that are still alive. I'm grateful. My Grammy just turned 100 years old, and while our relationship has changed over the years, the last time I saw her, she recognized me, and I was grateful for that. And she's just just such a source of happy memories in my life. It's just neat to see somebody get to live a very full and long life in this day and age, especially with the work I do. We see too many people die young in the work that we do, which also makes me grateful for the lives that we touch and the lives that we've been on the journey with, during this time, the time such as this. So this morning, that's what I wanted to share with you is a message on gratitude, because one of the things that I realized very often is we can be high thinkers or low thinkers, and I know I had somebody come talk to our staff at the Resource Center about the three principles because it really does line up with kind of our Christian faith about the idea that we can hold our thoughts captive. And some we shouldn't and should let them go, and that, the renewing of our minds, is something that is scriptural. Um, and again, I think for some people, they mistakenly think, becoming a Christian means, it's like a magic wand is waved and everything's going to be good. And, Jesus loves you and, things are great. But really, it's not often like that. And very much walking our faith out is a journey. And it's a progression and it's a process. And, we talk about progress, not perfection, because, for us, Christ is the perfecter of our faith, not ourselves. And, for me, that's a relief that it's not up to me. We used to say if it is to be, it's up to me. Well, no, that's not really how our faith works. And our strength is really found in that surrender or recognizing the dependency we have on Jesus for the relationship that we have with our holy God. So I just want to share my screen here with you. If let's see, get this up, our PowerPoint for this morning. Why is it not full screen? Let's see if we can fix this up. That's not even what I wanted to. That's not what I wanted to show you. That's why. All right, let's see. I gotta share my screen again and try to get the PowerPoint up. So let's try this again. This is me having a ton of work to do, right? Let me go back. Yeah. Let's see if I can bring this PowerPoint up. Maybe it would be the issue. Here we are. Too many PowerPoints going on at the same time. All right, so let's go back to my Zoom meeting and share the screen. And here it is. Share. All right. Then I'm just going to bring it to the slideshow and from the beginning. Here we go. I'm kind of excited because we've enlisted somebody's help to become our technology person for the trainings that we do at the Resource Center. And you can see it's hard to do both, I think, to be the one that's giving the message and then also running technology in the background. Unless you're Joy, she's very talented at that. So this morning we're going to talk about living with an attitude of gratitude, considering that Thanksgiving is coming, and I would say for a lot of us, there's a lot of messaging going on about how the sky is falling and it's not really a time to be thankful. But I don't think that's true. I think when we look for the blessings, we find them. When we look for the hardships, we find them. Um, and I go back to the renewing of our minds, being reminded just of how many things we do have uh, to be grateful for is really really important in times such as these. So that's the thing that I wanted to talk about: living with gratitude when the world seems to generate all these reasons to live with a lack of it. Right now, with COVID-19, there are real things that are hurting our hearts. I mean, in Tilton, we've lost some people um, over at our veterans home. We have staff that come to our church. Um, and what strength of character and courage and um, just amazing people. So many of our care workers are. I mean, I've met some bad ones, but for the most part, we're pretty blessed in this country, and should be grateful for the healthcare system we have. There are so many societies in this world right now that just throw away their people when they're incapacitated for any reason. Um, and we have veterans homes, so that's pretty awesome. But just knowing that we can do this type of work, support workers, have our meltdowns and our breakdowns, but then we tend to roll up our sleeves and get to work. And knowing that that's what's going on with a lot of the healthcare workers right now, and the nursing homes especially, it's pretty awesome, and we should be grateful for their service. But COVID-19, of course, is wreaking havoc in the hundreds of thousands now that have died from this illness. And so there are a lot of Thanksgiving tables that will be missing people. For many of us, we can't get to our families. We can't be with them. I mean, my parents are approaching 80 themselves, and are in their 70s and can't take the chance. And I know my two kids are going to visit them outdoors with masks on, social distancing, kind of as a surprise in December. Um, but we've talked about, especially with like my job and just the high risk populations that we deal with, that I just can't even take a chance of being in their proximity. We look at the divisive election cycle we've just gone through, and the current president kind of fueling that fire still. you know I think for many leaders, we really need to know you know what the consequences will be for the people that we are charged with stewarding when divisive things come up like this. And I've been part of a church split that was just so incredibly painful to walk through. And really looking back, I really have an issue with the person that was at the top of that, and the decisions that could have been made that would have saved that congregation so much pain, and really a very suffering time, and for many people who just walked away from church after that. Church is made up of people too, just like our society. Nobody is perfect, and that divisiveness is just you know yeah, it's just interesting to talk to some very rational people that have said, let's just move forward and do the best we can with what we've got on both sides of the aisle, and how some on both sides of the aisle just want to make this one more fight with our brothers and sisters in our country. And for me, it's like I'm just reminded Jesus prayed for our unity. So I don't want to contribute to that divisiveness in any type of way. And people ask, are you red? Are you blue? I'm like, always been purple because, I look at policies and not people and figure out, where the interests lie, and, sometimes I think we get caught up in what is in the media and all of that and really forget to look at the facts. And even today with the way things have spun, it's so hard to know. But, when given the choice, we either can contribute to divisiveness or we can contribute to peaceful discourse. And I think when we live with an attitude of gratitude with everything we have, we can always choose to be part of solutions rather than be part of problems. The same thing I would say goes for the race disparities that have really, always been there, but have come to light in a new way with some of the recent events in our country. Um, and again, it's like, how do we contribute to solutions and not be part of the problem? And I think, when we live with an attitude of gratitude with what we got, and we live, and you're going to see that when we live with an attitude of gratitude, we do live more generously. And I think for people with any type of privilege, it can be a choice to step down from that place of privilege to be part of the solution. For people that are in power groups, very often they don't recognize that they're even in them. I think it was Maya Angelou who I just love this quote that she says something like, um, "I did the best I can with what I knew, but when I knew better, I do better. I did better, or when we know better, we should do better." Is the idea, and I think that's an important concept to hold on to, as somebody who lives with my moral compass, pointing at Christ. Um, we see where Christianity is persecuted. You can't bring anything to do with Christianity into the schools. And, I was kind of smiled because they created a quote unquote karma closet at one of the public schools. And of course, karma is part of the Hindu religion. And I thought to myself, if they would have, taken a proverb or something from the Bible that was basically the same thing, that we take care of each other or love our neighbor as ourselves, how it would never fly, but they can put something that says Hindu, reflects Hindu religion in there. And I thought that was interesting. And, I don't find that stuff offensive at all. I just kind of, remind myself, that people hear what they hear and the world takes it and they do something with it, because I was talking with actually, one of the employees who was posting about this. Um, and I said, yeah, Hinduism says karma. The world says, what goes around comes around. The Bible says you reap what you sow. And so it's like for us, we think of sowing blessings or sowing into people, or, where you invest in your treasure, there's where your heart. Um, but I think the lack of awareness of world religions, allows things to seep in that people don't even realize. Um, it's a time where stigma and bias towards people with substance use disorders or mental health issues, um, you know, we just see people hurt over and over. And then we see even people who are hurting themselves, hurting others. Because even within the substance use or recovery community, we see a lack of understanding sometimes for the different pathways that people find recovery. Um, and there are a lot of people, and I don't care what part of society you are in, or what your culture is like. It's my way or the highway, and we end up hurting each other. And the list just goes on. Living with gratitude when the world seems to generate reasons to live with a lack of it can sometimes be challenging, but it's almost simple, although not necessarily easy, to cultivate gratitude. And that's something that I wanted to talk about because when I think of, so many people in my life and the adverse childhood experiences that they may have had, not to learn to live with gratitude, but to see the negative in things. Sometimes overcoming that, it takes the renewing of the mind. And sometimes that takes practice and it takes some skills. Um, But what I want you to know is there's a lot in it for you, to live with that attitude of gratitude, that we're called to live with as a part of the Christian family. So, Thessalonians. This is a letter from Paul to the Thessalonian church, chapter 5, verses 16 through 18. It says, "Rejoice always, pray continually, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus." So when I look at that scripture, one of the things that really stands out to me is it's pretty much a statement or a command. Um, it's not a request. It's not say, maybe you should do this, a suggestion. But it's really a statement. And and I want to share with you why it's good for you, because I think there's these myths about Christianity, that it's boring, or you have to be like some goody two shoes or something to be Christian, or that somehow you have to give up everything that's good for you, or that feels good, I should say. But I think, for most people who I know that have really would consider themselves abiding Christians, they can't imagine living a life without Jesus. Um, and one of the reasons why I think it is because sometimes, you start out and you don't really understand everything, but you almost don't have to. I think it's kind of like digestion, I don't remember who said it, Rick Warren or somebody, that, just because you don't know how digestion works in your body doesn't mean you don't eat the sandwich. And sometimes just taking the leap of faith is like that, that, you see something that people have that you want. But that's why, it's important that as Christians, we know what we believe. We know the promises of God, and I know Joy talked about that last week. And we understand what it means. Because too often we see people that claim to be Christians that their lives don't reflect it at all. And then people talk about Christians being hypocrites. And, sometimes, it's mental illness. Sometimes, there's some substance use disorders that might be involved in some behaviors that come up. Very often we forget that we have a human nature as well as, the Christian nature, with the Holy Spirit living in us. But it's important to understand, there are reasons why these commands are in here, and that they're studying things all the time just to prove the truth of the Bible, even when people and scientists and stuff don't set out to do that. They prove the truth of it. So one study that I was reading about was from this doctor, PhD, and director of this project called Gratitude Works. One of the quotes from his writing that I really appreciated was this idea that gratitude heals, energizes, and transforms lives. And what's wild about this is the research bears this out. So we see the Bible, giving us this directive, and I wanted to take a look at, what has the world of science actually found this means. First of all, gratitude builds resilience. One of the things that I know from my work in family supports is that resilience is not something we're born with. Resilience is something that comes from the effects of being nurtured as a child, learning skills, having good supportive relationships when we're young. So we talk about things like attachment to our mothers or caregivers. We talk about a serve and return relationship, when babies' brains are being formed at a rapid rate or growing at a rapid rate, when, that 0 to 3 age group, how important that time is. It used to be that we thought that time didn't matter, that as children grow, they don't really understand what they're learning at that age, but we know now that that's absolutely not true. And we know that, even adults that have had really adverse childhood experiences or traumatic events that have happened in their childhood can still learn skills around communication, around problem solving, all these different things that helps build resilience. And gratitude, or living with gratitude, is one of those things that helps build resilience. Dr. Rahman Emans conducted the study where people kept a gratitude journal for just 3 weeks, and the results were actually astonishing. So right there, that's one thing you could do, is keep a gratitude journal. And if you go online, you can do all kinds of searches for prompts around gratitude journals, like, asking, some positive generative questions of yourself. So positive meaning they lead you in a good direction. So it might be like, you know, what is the top 5 things I'm thankful for this morning as you're waking up. So you're setting your day on a trajectory of gratitude. Or but right before you go to bed, to maybe get some sound sleep or go to bed with a positive attitude. What were the 3 top things that I was grateful for that happened in my day. Even when times are super hard, it can be the small things that we're grateful for. You know, I can remember waiting for somebody for a long time, for a surgery that was going on. I was so grateful somebody brought me dinner. You know, um, Sleeping in the hospital overnight on a couch. I was so grateful somebody brought me a blanket. Sometimes it's those little things, and if we focus on that, it can put this temporary little smile on our face, that can just kind of transform our attitude when we're going through hard times. In less than a month, participants consistently reported an array of benefits in several realms critical to well-being during the study. And all of this information was basically taken from the study and can be found on the website. And you can actually look up his um, Gratitude Works page. And there's a number of books about gratitude there. And what's interesting is he's, back in January of this year, he put out a request of proposals to talk about gratitude to God, and looking at, the effects that has on people's lives. So some of the results that this study showed was that the psychological benefits were pretty impressive. There were increased levels of positive emotions. Now, of course, you think about it, when we think of with our emotions, for many people, that's where our thoughts get kind of messed up. We start living in the emotions instead of our reality. We let circumstances kind of guide our inner thinking, instead of kind of protecting ourselves from that happening. So it's kind of important to recognize, that negative emotions can have a negative effect on our health. Um, so when we see an increased level of positive emotions, that can be a good thing. There's increased alertness, increased joy and pleasure, increased optimism and happiness. Now, you think of increased alertness, how many times have, something upset us so much that we're thinking about that even when we're driving and we're not paying attention, and we get from one place to another and recognize we haven't been mindful about our driving at all. We've been so focused on some problem or something, so think about these benefits, psychological. For physical benefits, people tend to have stronger immune system, decreased headaches and aches and pains, um, and lower pressure, and even better sleep. So this is another reason why when we talk about gratitude journals, if you focus on a few things that you're grateful of your day right before you go to sleep, that can help benefit you too. Social benefit, for the most part, when people are feeling grateful, they tend to have a more helpful spirit about them. They tend to be more generous and compassionate for others. They also tend to be more forgiving. Um, when people want to be angry because they're in a mindset of anxiety, frustration, or some type of emotional anger, embarrassment, any of those things, it's hard to be forgiving of those people around you. You almost want to react out of the emotions that you're living in. Um, People tend to be more outgoing, um, and feel less lonely and isolated. And I would say temperament can sometimes play into that too. I was reading an article about even temperament being a risk factor for some children, and I thought about it, when you're the outgoing Tigger person that everybody wants to play with, you get a lot of attention. If you're somebody that tends to be more negative and more introverted and kind of isolate yourself, sometimes there's very little interaction that goes on. So you think of, you know, the Eeyore of Tigger and Winnie the Pooh and Piglet and stuff. You're someone that's kind of bummed out all the time, you know. It doesn't seem like it's that much fun to play with Eeyore, as it does with, you know, a Tigger or a Winnie the Pooh or a Piglet. Let's see here. Expressing gratitude benefits more than the person actually doing the expressing. You know, I was thinking about this too. I had seen this quote: feeling gratitude and not expressing it is like wrapping a present and not giving it. Um, and I was thinking about how we show love to each other, you know, and you're probably familiar with the 5 love languages, and was thinking about words of affirmation and how some people need to know and need to hear it. Um, to feel appreciated. And this is the thing, that while living with an attitude of gratitude benefits people on multitude of levels, it also positively affects the person receiving the gratitude, or for those who are exposed to it. And again, I think even in our work environment, you know, when somebody's feeling grateful and happy and appreciative and stuff, they're nice to be around. And it just kind of lifts up the whole atmosphere of our work environment. You know, and I'm thinking, if I'm frustrated or having, you know, a bad day and I'm upset with a couple of people, you know, staff meeting's not so fun to be sitting in. But the reality is that people who are thanked tend to feel more appreciated, and it tends to reinforce positive behaviors, especially if the primary language of love is words of affirmation. Um, like I said, some people need to hear it, and if they're not hearing it, they may not realize that they're important. You know, and you know, one of the worst things that we can do, I think, as human beings is make the people around us feel insignificant to us. You know, people who are thanked tend to feel more appreciated, and it tends to reinforce those positive behaviors. And you think about, you know, the behaviors we like to see in people around us, you know, is all of those things that are like the fruit of the spirit, right? And that they're patient with us, and that they love us, and that they're going to be kind to us, and have that generous spirit with us. Um, that they'll be steadfast in times of trials, you know, with us. Um, and practicing gratitude creates a strong foundation for healthy, happier relationships. And that's where I think we can think of ways to show it. How do we show gratitude, to people? You know, for some of us, like I said, we need to hear it. We need to have that expression, in words. But for some people, it's expression in gifts. You know, my husband brought me flowers, and Mr. and Mrs. This couple that we just love. Um, just you know, makes a bouquet every once in a while and says, hey, it's time to give your wife flowers again. And it's one way that they express gratitude, both to my husband, but also, you know, allows them to express it in a way that's a talent for them. And it's just really something very beautiful and very precious. And um, I think about the little kid that gives the dandelion, you know, how that can be very precious to some. And some people that are not living with an attitude of gratitude may just see it as a wilted weed, you know, and we can damage people, when we react that way. You know, spending time, you know, with individuals. You know, I have some people in my life where quality time is important to them. You know, being grateful for those relationships. Sometimes I go out of my way to spend a little bit of time, you know, even with as busy as things are. You know, I try to make a point of, you know, maybe showing up at somebody's work, or maybe swinging into their place of business or something. Um, and I think in a way that's one way that I don't do it because I'm like intentional about it. I would say it's more like an awareness that I love these people, and want to make sure that they're aware of that, and it's more than a text, you know. So you know, thinking about ways that we can express gratitude, in our relationships can be, you know, one way that we can help ourselves live with an attitude of gratitude. Some other things in a study, and these were quotes right from the study, summary findings, was that grateful people report higher levels of positive emotions, life satisfaction, vitality, optimism, and lower levels of depression and stress. The disposition towards gratitude appears to enhance pleasant feeling states more than it diminishes unpleasant emotions. So that's something to me when I think about strength-based approach to life or services or a strength-based approach to anything, it's not that we're focusing on the negative stuff. It's that we're focusing on the positive stuff, and the positive stuff eventually displaces the yucky stuff in our lives. Um, so grateful people do not deny or ignore the negative aspects of life. Like I was saying, I mean, bad things happen. I can say it, yeah, it stinks sitting in a hospital for 6 hours, but I can say, well, it does stink, but hey, we have medical care in this country that doesn't deny people for a lack of payment. Um, and without getting into all the irritations of insurance and everything else. But in this country, if you get into a car accident and you need to get to a hospital by ambulance, nobody's going to leave you on the side of the road like they do in some other places in this world that I've been to. Another thing about the results of some of his work was that people with a strong disposition towards gratitude have the capacity to be empathetic and to take the perspective of others. They are rated as more generous and more helpful by people in the social networks. So, this is a cool thing because having empathy is another kind of protective factor in our lives that makes us more likable, more able to cooperate with people, more able to communicate differences with people, more likely to agree to disagree instead of fighting and living in negative conflict. We can have conflict that's healthy. Um, and again, if gratitude can be learned or a skill set can be learned, it means that we can learn to be more empathetic, to um, be more generous and more helpful within our social networks because these can be skills. And I say this because I know a number of people listening to this didn't have the greatest childhoods. They didn't have parents that necessarily showed them the way to live in a healthy way, within relationship. So there's hope, and I think of just like recovery core values or the family support principles or all of these different things. It's like Jesus said it first, a long time ago, when we think about how old the Bible is, um, that ever-present hope, with him as our example, um, has always been there for us. Spirituality is another area in Dr. Eamon's summary of findings that I thought, what's in it for us, right? It's and I'm not saying that we should live that way, but I always feel like adult learners, if they see something in it for them, they might do something with the information they're hearing, Um, and under the title spirituality in his summary of findings, he said that those who regularly attend religious services and engage in religious activities such as prayer, reading religious materials, score, they are more likely to be grateful. So grateful people are more likely to acknowledge a belief in the interconnectedness of all life and a commitment to and a responsibility to others. Gratitude does not require religious faith, but faith enhances the ability to be grateful. And I think about this. I think about the scriptures that talk about Jesus, the goats and the sheep. So you're familiar with that when he says we're going to be separated out, basically. Um, and that when somebody's thirsty and we gave them something to drink, that we're doing it for him. When somebody's in prison and we go visit them, that we're doing it for him. When somebody has no clothing and we clothe them, we're doing it for him. Those kind of attitudes of generosity or seeing our neighbor and wanting to take care of them. I look at the 4,000 meals a month or so that the food pantry puts out of our church, or the the clothing ministry that everybody's complaining about right now because it's just kind of overflowing as we haven't been able to push anything out because of COVID right now. And I just believe that eventually COVID will go away because hey, we don't have the Spanish flu anymore. So someday we'll be able to kind of pick that ministry back up. But I think the generosity of spirit that we see in our congregation. the recovery coaches that will just move mountains to remove barriers, for people in recovery. Our food pantry volunteers that will drive pretty much anywhere for a family that's in desperate need of food. For the work that they do to do food drives, so that when we have a family that doesn't qualify by the New Hampshire food bank guidelines or for the community action program guidelines, that we still have that church pantry operating in the background, that we can help anybody. And it's because of the work a handful of people put in, who are grateful for what they have, and have, very often been in a position where they had to rely on the help of others, and bend over backwards to help the people that come through the door, knowing that they've been there. And because of somebody else's generosity, or lack of, the impact on their lives were noticed. And so either out of appreciation and gratitude, they give back, or out of knowing how painful it was to not have the help when they needed it, they give back. And we see that, in a lot of people, in our congregation, and in our community. And I was just thinking, for me, one of the ways that I kind of reprogram my mind when I'm feeling a little ungrateful, is to remind myself, of some of the scriptures. And sometimes it's not even being ungrateful, because I think I live pretty gratefully, I would say, with an attitude of gratitude. I choose to be grateful even in the hard times. It's like, there's a song by Casting Crowns, that I will praise you in this storm, knowing that, he's sovereign and I can't see the big picture. It's like one of the ways that I kind of just trust in him and kind of rely on him in hard times, so that I don't get caught up in, a self-perpetuating state of negativity, which I do think a lot of people get caught up in, especially if they struggle with things like depression and anxiety. It's sometimes hard, and sometimes we need specialized help, to learn coping mechanisms to kind of help us, get through some of those things. When it came to materialism, grateful individuals place less importance on material goods, and they are less likely to judge their own and others' success in terms of possessions accumulated. They are less envious of others and are more likely to share their possessions with others relative to less grateful persons. So that's interesting too, and I think that's absolutely true, and it's like human nature. Most of the people I work with would give you the shirt off their backs, but if they have somebody that starts feeling that they, perceive maybe are a little entitled, and aren't, appreciating the help, then all of a sudden, sometimes, there's a question: where do we put the boundaries, around this? So it's interesting how great gratitude plays on both sides of that coin, so to speak. Again, First Thessalonians 5:16-18 says, "Rejoice always, pray continually, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus." So this was, written in Paul's letter to the Thessalonian church, just under 2,000 years ago, about. And I think about this. So we hear this, and we see these scientific studies coming out today and being studied today in, 2020. Um, and yet I think to myself, this was a command that was given to us by God in the Bible, all that long ago in Paul's writings. And when we look at the benefits, I think it's no wonder it is God's will for us. And I think that is one thing that I just love seeing in science, is like, you hear that science is going to disprove the Bible. And what we find all the time is that no, it just proves it, that God is love, and, he has our best interests at heart. And when it comes to living with an attitude of gratitude, you definitely can see it. So there are many other places in the Bible that we read about being thankful. Psalm 100 is one of those, and in the Psalms, there's all kinds of verses around expressing gratitude. But enter his gates with thanksgiving, and his courts with praise. Give thanks to him and praise his name. For the Lord is good, and his love endures forever. His faithfulness continues through all generations. I have always loved that psalm for a number of reasons. When I get stuck, and I'm not feeling so grateful, I am reminded that the Bible has these little examples of how to pray. Enters gates with thanksgiving is within your heart, right? So when we are having a bad day, it is okay to go to God with your stuff, but it's still good to enter with thanksgiving. Thankful in all circumstances. Paul talks about being content in all circumstances, and I've always found that hard. How do you be content when the world's falling, in around you? And sometimes it's being reminded of these scriptures. Entering his gates with thanksgiving and his courts with praise, praising him for who he is, what he's done, the blessings that you have, because even on your worst days, you can still find water in this country that's not poisoned. It's still accessible. That is one thing that foreign missions work really taught me is like, oh my gosh, we have so much to be grateful for in this country. And like, I can remember my mom saying, those cliche things that, we're pretty racist, I would say, in its day, but it's like Maya Angelou said, when you didn't know better, you said things that, weren't very smart or wise or were a result of our programming. But she used to say all the time that there were children starving in China. And that's why you should clean your plate. We should be grateful for the food that we have. And I never knew what that meant. I didn't think I even knew where China was as a kid, or that it was, another country in the world. But I knew that I was tired of hearing that phrase from my mom as a child. But my mom and my dad both were always people that, really emphasize the idea that we're all God's children, and that we are to love our neighbor, um, and to be grateful to God for everything that we have. Um, and I look at that scripture, and it reminds me, that even when things are bad, I can still enter into the presence of God with thanksgiving and praise him prior to dumping my stuff on him. And it's, and I think anybody that's gone through any kind of counseling training knows that talking about your problems is doing something about your problems. And the good thing about God is he's always listening. You can go into prayer, any time of the day. Um, and he's always listening. And it can bring you back to a place of gratitude when you're not feeling so grateful. So we can begin with thanksgiving for who he is, recognizing every good thing comes from him, and grow from there. Living with this attitude of gratitude and being thankful can be a learned skill that we need to practice. And again, it's a directive. It's not a request, and it's for our own good. So when we think about the phrase, because I hear this a lot, how you doing? Daryl tends to say blessed and highly favored, but I've also heard the saying grateful, thankful, and blessed. What I want to say is take the time to be mindful of those things, though. Why are you grateful? What are you thankful for? How are you blessed? Are you looking to see the blessings in your life? Because I think even in the hard times, and I was just thinking about my cousin Chrissy, who she attends a Catholic church out in Connecticut and is pretty involved with like a prayer group and stuff like that. And we text each other praying for the different people in our congregations. And, for her community, there has been some losses to COVID that have rocked her world. And I just want to, lift up that whole congregation and my cousin Christina and the people in her life that are still fighting for their lives right now, who have also lost people. Very painful. Also for some of my friends in the Head Start programs in Massachusetts, where there's been some great losses among staff, and just really painful. And during this time, like, I'm grateful that my cousin's there to pray with me. I'm thankful that my friends in Massachusetts, like, we're going to get to see them in some Zoom meetings coming up. Um, I feel blessed that I have connections with some guys that are going to help me fix my bathroom. That, like, there's just things that I can look for um, to acknowledge that I am blessed and I have a lot to be thankful for and grateful for. And I can recognize, over the course of my lifetime, there's been some bad things that have happened, and there's stuff that I, bear now that are very, very painful for me. But I know that living in that attitude of gratitude is for my own good, because God said to do it. And his directives are always for my own good because he's sovereign in my life. So I just wanted to say, if you're feeling a little blue because you can't be with family or because you have to stay home and isolate for Thanksgiving because of this unprecedented time for us that we're living in the age of COVID, um, to have a happy Thanksgiving by choice, like determined to have a happy Thanksgiving. Whoever's in your household, even if you're by yourself, and you have to look up stuff on YouTube about living with an attitude of gratitude and spend some time maybe watching other sermons online. And I'll confess, I love the music of some of my friends' churches, like Mark Warren down in Concord, or Matt Furr down or actually Mark's in Pembroke, and Matt's in Concord. Like every once in a while, I'll just catch some of their stuff to encourage me, as a pastor. There's a lot of music on YouTube that you can catch, praise music, and fill your home with good songs, remembering the goodness of God. Thanksgiving is one of those days that, it became so controversial because of, the damage that was done to the indigenous people of America at the time when the Europeans first came. But I think to myself, we have a choice as Americans. We can keep looking back at the past and living in, the shame and pain of things gone wrong, or we can unify and press forward and acknowledge that bad things have happened, but how can we be better, now that we know better? And how can we direct our hearts and our attitudes in a way that would be pleasing to God? Um, I just think of what Jesus would think about all of this, of where we are today. And I can't imagine um he'd be happy with some things, but I do think he would be happy with others, with the presence, having him present at our tables, on Thanksgiving, um, as we give thanks to him and we do remember the goodness of God. So have a good Sunday, and hopefully I'll see you soon. Bye. Hmm. I've lost my meeting controls.